host, Scary Pops. And everyone loves a good scare, so let's get into it. Tonight's story begins with Annie, a daughter who was having a bad headache and went to bed. They didn't think nothing of it. However, the next day she was dead. She passed away from an aneurysm. And after her funeral, the family went away to get their minds off the tragedy. And the father asked my uncle, my mom's brother, to check in on the pets. My mom and dad, who were dating at the time, went with him. And my mother had heard there was a grand piano and she wanted to play it. And my dad was studying to be a veterinarian at the time. So they took the trip. And after entering the house, my uncle and my father headed to the basement to see the animals. And my mother went to the piano on the ground floor. She was playing it when she felt something brush against her ankles. She thought a cat must have left the basement and walked past her. So she kept playing, and then she felt it again. She looked into the piano, but she saw nothing. She was startled. But she started again, and then she felt hands clasp her legs tightly. She got up and dashed to the basement door, called my uncle and father, and waited for them. Back outside, my uncle could tell my mom was rattled and asked, "What was wrong?" She told him what had happened, and he turned white. She said, "What is it?" And he said, "Well, the daughter who had died used to play a game with her father, and when he played the piano, she would crawl underneath, grab his ankles, and push his feet up and down on the pedals." The cabin. A hiker decided to go on a hike by himself, something he was not very used to. Well, the whole day was normal. Trees and bushes engulfed all his surroundings. He enjoyed being outdoors in the mountains, and nothing seemed very strange. However, it was until he started making his way back to his car. 8 hours of a hike was pretty much a good enough day, and the sky was already getting dark, and he needed to get back fast. But what was odd was he didn't recognize the trail back, so he started to panic. Night had already taken over, and all he had was a flashlight and no clue on how to get back. So he knew it was already too late and too dangerous to keep going through the forest. So he began to worry that he would have no shelter for the night. Then, luckily enough, he stumbled across a broken down cabin. It was dark, and it seemed like no one had visited the place in years, but he knew it was the only place that he could rest, at least till daylight. And then his flashlight was almost out of battery anyways, so he knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. So he let himself in, where strangely enough there was a bed fitted for one person right in the center. Well, he knew that if the owner came back, he could probably explain himself, and that the owner wouldn't mind. So he went ahead and got himself comfortable in bed, and as he tried to sleep, he couldn't ignore the collection of paintings around the room. There was portraits of strange-looking people peering at him, each wearing a smile that sent chills up his spine. But not too long after his exhaustion from the hike, he started to fall asleep, and he was able to ignore the faces. But then the next morning he got up early, and he was shocked. He looked around, he said, "Wait a minute, there were no paintings around the room, just windows."
Last year was my senior year of high school, and my friend group was always full of dumb ideas. All it took was a boring weekend night for us to go out and find anything to entertain us. That's exactly what happened this night. It was me and my two other friends, hanging out and just trying to think of something to do. One of them, Mikey, had been talking of this abandoned place nearby for the past few weeks. We pushed it off for a while, but now with nothing to do, it didn't sound all that bad of an idea to go exploring. He said it was a house on the edge of town where all the farmland was, but aside from the location, that was about all he knew. Me and the other friend shrugged and said why not, and within 15 minutes we were on the road. We drove for a half hour until we reached the point where Mikey said to turn off onto an unpaved road, and a few minutes later we exited the tree line and were right in front of the house. It was a very large house with a huge plot of abandoned farmland around it. We got out of the car and each took a flashlight, then approached the front door. I turned the knob and it was unlocked, but when I tried shoving it open, it was blocked by something heavy on the other side. We went around to the back and tried the back door, but that door was locked. We resorted to crawling through a busted window on the side of the house. As soon as we were in, a strong, awful smell took over. It was like a mixture of mold and rotting animal carcass. I mean, this was the worst smell I'd ever experienced by a long shot. My friends didn't seem as fazed as I was, so we kept moving in. Right away, we noticed footprints all throughout the dusty hallway floors. We thought nothing of it because we figured this place had basically been a tourist attraction for stupid teenagers like us. The whole place was unnervingly empty though. There wasn't any old furniture or garbage on the floor. As we walked through the first few rooms, we reached the hallway that led to the front door, and against the front door was an old couch with a bunch of boxes on top of it. Whoever had done that had taken what looked like everything from inside the house just to block the front door from opening. We continued up the stairs to see if the upstairs rooms were emptied too. At the top of the steps, I shined my flashlight down the hallway. There were 3 doors. We opened the first 2, and they were both empty bedrooms. Then I opened the third, and not surprisingly, it was empty too, but this room was much smaller than the others. The reason this confused all of us was because there were no more rooms next to it. So based on the layout of the house, it was easy to assume that this room was supposed to be double the size of the others since there were no more doors. With nothing left to see, we started back down the stairs, but as we got halfway down, we all heard the same thing. It sounded like a ball hitting the floor, rolling, then quickly and intentionally being stopped. It came from upstairs where we just were. Cautiously, we checked each of the rooms again and found nothing. All of us hearing the exact same thing made it extra odd because we all knew it happened, but there was nothing upstairs. After that, we were all getting uncomfortable and we quickly left the house through the same window we came in from. We walked to the front where the car was and got in. Just before I pulled out though, I noticed 2 windows upstairs on the left side of the house, and I specifically remembered that the small room we were confused by only had 1 window. I pointed this out to my friends, and we all sat there, staring at the second floor windows and trying to figure out what was going on. Then there was a sudden flicker of a shadow moving across the blinds, followed by a dim light glowing from behind the window. In the light, the figure of a man could be seen looking out the window at us. I put the car in drive, did a U-turn, and sped down the dirt road, getting out of there as fast as possible. After some discussion, Mikey convinced us to call the police, but the police found nothing in the house. Whoever was there had moved out and probably took everything with them. When I think back on it now, I'm just happy that we didn't try too hard to search for any more rooms when we were up there. If we did, I wouldn't doubt it if whoever was hiding in there was prepared to take drastic measures not to be found.